It's the final week of the regular season. What lies ahead? Grab a drink and join us on tonight's tailgate. Welcome to tonight's tailgate. I'm Michael.
I'm Dennis.
And I'm Luke.
Tonight we're just gonna try to continue as normal. I don't know why you're talking so quiet, Luke.
Well, it is the weekend of Ohio State and Michigan, and so I am trying to keep everything down low so Michigan can't steal anything.
Oh, that makes a ton of sense.
I don't know if that'll work, man. There's usually somebody like looking over their shoulder, kind of copying, recording. So
yeah, I mean they're really good at it, and they've been doing it for a while, so they definitely have their system down pat. But no, in all seriousness, I lost my voice. So unlike Josh Pate, I'm going to kind of tough it through. And
shots fired.
Yeah, just kidding. Josh Pate's great, and I love listening to his stuff. Don't cancel me, please.
I don't feel like Josh Pate would cancel you.
I don't think he would either. But I'm going to be drinking a lot and trying to get through this. So
and he means drinking water. By the
water and my drinks. So
hot water, tea,
tea, whatever I've got.
Spiked something, I don't know.
But just bear with me when my voice cracks. Don't make me feel like I'm going through puberty because I am almost 40. So
he's 12 again.
He'll just sound like he's going through puberty, but he won't actually be going through puberty. But before we get into that, we're going to go and talk about our sponsor for this evening, which is Explore Tours. If you're in the Nashville area and would like to know the story of Nashville, join. You can check them out at exploretours.com and book a tour today. They do actually have this upcoming. On the 28th, they will be doing a specialty cocktail tour that has to do with the Civil War history of Nashville, and also finishing out at a cocktail bar called Sit Boldly, or a speakeasy called Sit Boldly. You can purchase those tickets through their website as well, and that's this week only. That goes on that event is on the 28th of November. That is at exploretours.com. So we had some exciting games this past weekend, for sure. Sure.
We did.
Some of us had really exciting games, and then other of us were wishing that the game would be over after the first play.
I mean, I think it was over after like the first quarter, wasn't it?
Well, it's the first play. We'll just start with the first play, because that's all the play that mattered. Tennessee ran 75 yards, and
if the game ended there, they would have won.
They would have won, been 6-0. But yeah, we're just talking about Tennessee versus UGA. That was a dominant performance by Georgia. They came into Tennessee's home turf. We've talked about this all year. Neyland is one of the hardest places to play in the SEC.
I mean, you could tell even UT couldn't play there.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah, it was a very competitive atmosphere for UT themselves.
Yes.
When you've got a QB that has a QBR of is a 32.1, and
you even have a higher rating than him.
I do, yeah. On my accuracy for upsets. I mean, even me, I was 33% this week, but
back on track.
Yeah, back on track. And it's just there. Georgia came up. They came into play. They played like they've played all year. I should say they've improved. They've improved immensely. They looked like a cohesive unit. Mm-hmm. Tennessee's defense looked sloppy, incredibly sloppy. Especially the secondary just looked like they were non-existent. They made Beck look excellent. And then the offense just didn't do their job. They didn't, Milton he just, I don't know if he just was having a head case game or whatnot, but he wasn't reading the defenses properly. But arguably he hasn't been doing that all season properly, aside from against, lesser opponents that he should be doing it to.
Right. Yeah.
And so it really begs the question of like why in the world why in the world Nico wasn't put in. It at that point doesn't even matter. And I know, if you're wanting to try to save the red shirt and whatnot, at this point, or you're just wanting to make sure you run the risk of getting him injured or whatnot. Yep. But it's just there's just too much at stake. You gotta play to actually win. You don't just play just to win next year.
I feel like the quarterbacks in this one were, or if you look at them throughout the year, right? Beck started off the year and he was kind of the big question mark for Georgia. It's like they've got a good team. how was he going to step in for Stetson?
Bennett. Yeah.
Stetson, yeah.
The
And
old timer, you know.
Yeah, well, he's not as old as Cam Rising, but like, how is he going to do? And they really kind of did a good job of kind of slowly getting him into the system, and you can see that gradually he's gotten better and better and better throughout the year. On the opposite side, Tennessee's quarterback came in, and like, you kind of had really high expectations for him.
I would say so, yeah.
And throughout the year, and I think he really is. I think his head is the worst part of him, because it's like, he's got the arm strength, he's got the talent, but he can't get out of his own head.
Nope.
And so throughout the year, you've gradually seen him get worse and worse and worse, to a point where you're just going, like, now you're literally looking at a freshman quarterback and going, please put him in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I would agree with that.
And I think some of that's also just the Tennessee fan base just wants to see what Nico can do, especially against a good opponent. So there's a lot of hope right now. The conversation that I'm hearing amongst all the Tennessee fans and other Tennessee streamers and stuff like that are doing stuff on YouTube and whatnot, their thought process is like, one, Nico could but maintain his redshirt status even if he was to start and play the game against Vanderbilt and also start and play the bowl game. And if that's the case, then why not? Just let him do it. Like Milton, your time here is done. Yep. We can put you in cleanup duty if you really want it, but honestly, let's let Gadsden Moore run, which is our third stringer, who's been sitting really patiently in the wings. He came up from with Heupel from UCF. So it for me just doesn't make any sense as to why we're just continuing to why Heupel's continuing to sit with Milton. I don't care how good someone practices, like how good they look on the practice field. If they consistently every game in and game out just look like a head case, they just don't. They are setting themselves up with their raw talent. They're setting themselves up to strictly just be a journeyman in the NFL. That's all their job.
I feel like that's at best.
At best.
Yeah.
And the only thing that they're going to be doing is to go in to throw a deep ball. That's it.
Oh, and let's be honest, I would gladly go be a journeyman in the NFL.
Oh yeah, it's the easiest job in the NFL.
I would love to be a backup quarterback. Like, you're telling me I'm going to make $5 million to hold a clipboard? Sure.
Yeah, looks great.
I could do that.
Yep. But speaking of teams that actually had some competition to them, the next two games that we've got that we're recapping, both were incredibly competitive, or at least they felt incredibly competitive.
I would agree.
So,
yeah.
Who wants to take it next?
I mean, you want to go first?
Sure. Yeah, I'll go.
I'll let you go first. You know, while we got your voice.
Yeah. We'll see how long it lasts. But
you go from 12 to exactly.
I was Utah, Arizona, and I will say that the beginning of it, obviously the score was 42-18. Arizona came out swinging. They scored the first 28 points, and it was really kind of a crazy sequence in the first quarter. They had I think 2 passing touchdowns, and then they actually blocked a punt for a touchdown, and then scored another one in the second quarter. And then in the second half, they had like a rushing touchdown, and then in cleanup, their backup quarterback threw a touchdown. So I mean, it was a lot closer. Like, again, tale of two halves. If you actually look at this, played the second half as if it was the first, it was a good game. Bryson Barnes was looking pretty good, obviously for who he is and for being kind of their third stringer and who he is. He's not playing bad, but he did end up with 2 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. He threw for a 2-point conversion. But yeah, the 2 interceptions really kind of were killers because they both ended really good, really sustained drives. One was a 12-play drive, and one was a 13-play drive. And so I think that's really when you look at this Utah team, they're really missing Cam Rising.
Oh yeah.
Now Cam Rising did announce that he was going to come back for next year. I think it's his 7th year.
Yeah.
So he really wanted to make sure that his grandkids got a chance to see him play.
It's important.
In that Utah Stadium. I mean, it's kind of crazy, and I mean, give it to the NCAA for allowing these type of things when people get hurt or transfer, for allowing them to keep playing. But I really am looking forward to a time when we get some young quarterbacks in here, because a lot of these guys are pretty old.
I got to see that he actually played with like Justin Herbert and everything like that, like literally around that same time. So it's
I mean, I've heard rumors that he also witnessed the birth of fire.
Right.
So
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised.
Oh, fire.
but I in a serious note, I also will say like what it shows for him, at least specifically him, is that one, he really does have a passion for the Utah team.
Mm-hmm.
He obviously loves his coaches. He
Yep.
loves the guys that he works with. I think he thinks that he might not really be as much of an NFL player as some as an actual potential contender for the draft. He probably if he has a star-studded year next year, he very easily could be.
And the thing is when you look at the quarterback class this year, it's loaded. And
It
so
is.
You're seeing Quinn Ewers. He decided to come back. You got Cam Rising come back, and I think a lot of that does have to do with, like, you look at the other quarterbacks and go, okay, am I legitimately gonna get drafted in the top 2 rounds?
Yeah.
Probably not. And the other thing, if you look at Utah, there's actually 2 guys coming back, Cam Rising, and then there was a tight end, Brant Kuith, I think, who was supposed to be really good this year, and he got hurt, tore his ACL, so he's coming back. But Utah's team is really heavy with, like, juniors, and I don't see a lot of them going into the draft. So next year, Utah, with Cam Rising and this tight end coming in, are going to be a big deal. Now, on the opposite end, going back to Arizona is very much like a senior team, a little more upper class, but their quarterback is a true freshman, Noah Fafita, and he's been playing amazing.
Lights out. Straight up lights out.
The sky's the limit for him, and I could really, with the fact that they've now, I think this is the 4th or 5th game in a row that they've beaten a ranked team at the time. I think a couple of them have dropped off, like Washington State, but he's playing awesome, and it's going to be really fun seeing what he does for Arizona next year.
Oh, 100%. I think Arizona really actually might be a force in the Big 12. Like I feel like they're going to actually be one of the top contenders for the Big 12.
I think so. They have a good coach kind of going around. So
well, yeah, you've got Oklahoma and Texas transferring out to the SEC. So I just feel like that's
somebody needs to step up.
Someone's going to step up, and you might see Oklahoma State, you might see Kansas, but I feel like Arizona's a very easy contender there for sure. So what you got, Dennis?
No, I'm actually going to stay in the Pac-12 as well. For as long as it's open, at least for now. But I was kind of surprised. I had Washington versus Oregon State as my game of the week last week.
Yep.
And Washington, I feel like barely took it, 22-20. But in the second half, I feel like I think they've done this now the second game in a row where they did not score any points in the second half whatsoever, and they were barely able to skate by. To be honest, when I saw kind of Oregon State kind of playing towards that, like the second half of the game, I'm like, this should be their game. They should definitely win it.
Yeah.
But them losing 22-20, I feel like it was kind of a bit heartbreaking because Oregon State really kind of showed their play. And honestly, I was actually kind of disappointed with Michael Penix's kind of play. Like, I know he didn't throw an interception or anything like that, but he was 13 for 28, 162 yards, 2 TDs. Like, for a person who has Heisman, who's been in the conversation for Heisman, you would expect a bit more. At least 200 yards passing. Even on the ground, he was 3 carries, 22 yards, and 1 TD, 1 rushing touchdown. So don't get me wrong, he showed up to be able to score, but to have that close of a game, and what Washington is known as like a very powerful offense, like scoring 22 points does not scream powerful offense.
No.
Not scoring any points in the second half does not scream powerful
Well,
offense.
and considering that this game, I mean, he looked, I mean, his numbers are decent.
Yeah.
But then when you go back to the game that he didn't have a touchdown,
Yeah.
like you start seeing him and you go, there's 2 or 3 games this year that just took you out of the Heisman, that you took yourself out of the Heisman contention. And so, like, he's still playing his game. He's still winning games, which that's the goal. But to really be that elite quarterback that is going to win the Heisman, he's taken himself out of it.
I think he's easily been taken out with those things. And mind you, I know Oregon State played a really good game. They actually had about 37 minutes with time possession of the ball. But Washington, so it's like, I can understand why it was a close game. Like, Oregon was able to kind of move the ball, be able to play a great team. But it was one of the things I was more or less kind of surprised on, like, how close it was. Yeah. Even though I was kind of favoring a little bit of Oregon State towards the end. A little disappointed by that overall.
Yeah. And honestly, I mean, if Washington then wins out and they're 12-0, like I have serious serious reservations about them doing well in the college football playoffs. But that's a conversation for next week. So, we're going to talk about some college football playoff prediction stuff.
Yeah, we're going to see some spoilers, see who was able to do it.
Yeah, exactly. But one of the guys that was I don't think we ever picked him, but there was a lot of people that were picking him to be a kind of a Heisman front runner before the season started. Was Jordan Travis, and you've got him as your hit of the week. What's going on there?
I do, because don't get me wrong, he actually just suffered an injury this past week. It was actually pretty gruesome. Like if you got to see it, his foot kind of went the other way, kind of folded to the other half.
Yep.
I know in our group chat, I kind of said it kind of reminded me of watching the Kevin Ware injury. Except for the bone part, it definitely kind of gave me that kind of just kind of reminiscent on that part.
Yep.
And I called it my hit of the week because not only is it just a kind of a gruesome injury, but it was it's an end to his career as a college player. It's possibly the risk of just Florida State season just ending.
Yeah.
And so that's going to throw a wrench definitely in the college football kind of playoff kind of groups kind of ranking, because right now Florida went from the number 4 to the college football playoffs to number 5. So they might just miss it in general. And even just Jordan Travis as an individual player, I just feel like his draft stock went from potential 1 or 2. We were talking, you were mentioning earlier, hey, there's a lot of good talent that's going to be kind of almost draft heavy, especially with quarterbacks. But he was able to kind of show with the Florida State team, he probably could have been, I don't know about first round, but definitely able to have conversation, be around the second round in terms of talent wise. But I feel with this injury, I'll be surprised if he gets that kind of third round, just because I haven't been able to find out what kind of injury it was. I just know he's had surgery for it, and nobody really wants to say anything.
They're playing
hush hush.
They're playing this like a hockey injury. They're lower body injury.
Yeah.
I mean,
I did a Google search and it just said leg injury. It didn't even give any specifics.
Yeah.
I really think it's going to end up kind of like Hendon Hooker.
Yeah.
Where I think this is going to be one of those things that his injury is going to drop his draft status, but it's probably going to be good for him because he's going to get to go to
that
a place.
expectation is going to be
expectation's not going to be there. He's going to probably get drafted by a team who has a quarterback who
can handle it.
Can handle it for a few years and kind of train and teach him. So I think it might actually in the long run be good for him.
Yeah,
obviously sitting in the hospital, I'm sure he's not thinking that way, but I think when it comes to his professional career, it might actually end up being good for him.
True.
And I can only hope for that.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, and I agree. I think one of the things for someone like him he's clearly more of a studier when it comes to he just seems he comes across as a player that really does study film, that really does pay attention to game plan, a lot more than some other just raw talent quarterbacks.
He just throw it into the wind.
Right.
True. Yeah. No. But it's just I think that him getting into a place where it really allows him to build the finesse and reinforcement of his habits of of studying and being more of a coach or as what Hendon Hooker is up in Detroit, which is he's considered the general of the offense. Yeah. Doing something like that would be, I think, very beneficial to him.
I mean, he has similar numbers as Hendon Hooker. His touchdown to interception ratio, he was 20 for 2, had 2,755 yards, 64 completion percentage. So his season numbers were actually really solid numbers.
Yep.
You can't really be upset by that.
Yep. No. But he's not the only one that took a hit this weekend.
Yeah, we're going to talk about implosions. And James Madison, you, my friends, imploded. And here's the thing. Did. I think we all agree that James Madison should be bowling. They should have the opportunity to bowl. The stupid rules from way back when there were only 20 bowl games shouldn't apply to James Madison. However, you also have to make sure that you're doing your thing. You were on a good streak, and you lost to the team that loves
to play
spoiler in Appalachian State.
Yep.
And so, I mean, obviously, I love Appalachian State because they spoiled a Michigan season one time and got a nice little blocked field goal. So I love them. But come on, James Madison. You got to win out. You got to make this an undefeated season and really put it to the NCAA and say, we were undefeated, and you didn't let us bowl. Now you got a loss. So
It's a lot harder.
Mind you,
I
it's
still
not even an FCS team either.
true. No,
Yeah.
no, they still should be able to bowl.
No, 100%.
I think they should be able to bowl, but you imploded. You let this game go. So
Yeah. Hopefully they can hold it together for their final game. That'd be
I hope so.
yeah.
We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, that's true.
So,
Or
but
will we? I don't know.
We'll talk about worse calls though. I'm just going to go ahead and get into
that's
it.
fine. Yeah, go for it.
And this one comes from Iowa. Iowa's had a couple reffing calls that have not gone their way. Now, it didn't end up killing them in the long run because they did end up winning this game. I think it was 25 points is what the total for both teams was. Another Iowa game with all defense. But Quinn Schultz was called for a roughing the passer. He's a free safety who came on like a 3rd and 7, came on a long blitz, and hit Paddock, the quarterback for Illinois, right as he's releasing the ball. There was no, he couldn't pull up. It was right as the ball left his hands. There was no crown of the helmet, and he was called for roughing the passer. And I understand, again, we kind of go back to, I understand the reason that we want to protect players, but now with all this, it's just kind of getting ridiculous. Like some of these calls, you look at the hit that Jaden Daniels took that was called roughing the passer but not targeting, and then you look at this and you just go, it's a hit.
True. Yeah.
It's a hit. And so, at some point, I was joking with Dennis earlier that it's like, well, what are you going to be able to do? Because now they're potentially going to take away the hip tackle.
Yeah, the hip drop tackle.
The hip drop tackle, and it's like
it's flag football, 2 and touch.
Yeah, I mean, it's flag football. And it's like
Sarcastic ball.
You have to whisper behind him like, hey, I'm close enough to you. You need to go down.
Like,
I mean, it's ridiculous. So
is it okay if I push you with 2 hands? Is it okay?
right? Yeah, I'm asking for consent to tackle you. So it's to a point where it's just kind of getting ridiculous. And again, Iowa still won. It didn't affect the game that much, but I'm just so tired of seeing these hits.
Inconsistent calls.
Inconsistent calls. It was a roughing the passer against Iowa, but then you look at another game and it's
not
nothing.
roughing. Yeah, it's not
Right.
roughing the passer.
It's a hit.
It's not. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm done.
Totally get that. And
I'm done talking about it.
Yeah. He's just over it. He's over it. But
He's even losing his voice over this.
You know what?
I've been yelling about that call since Saturday.
That's fair. You know what I'm not over. I'm not over the fact that I'm still 33% for my my upsets.
You're hitting Milton numbers, man.
Better than Milton numbers. Thank you very much. At least I'm consistent too. You know what to expect every year, every week. Every year. We've only been doing this for a couple weeks. But Clemson pulled it out. Actually, I shouldn't even say they pulled it out. They didn't even look like the game was out of reach at all. They were in charge of that game the entire time. There wasn't even a hope and a prayer from North Carolina. The score makes it look like it was a lot closer than it actually was. It really wasn't that close. Which it's exactly what I was expecting to see out of Clemson. Clemson, again, you're playing at Death Valley. It's a hard place to play. The one that was the upset that I picked last week that somewhat still stings is the fact that Oregon State didn't pull out the win against Washington because that was such a close game. Such a close game. Or Oregon State, I thank you for trying. To
they
make
gave one
money.
hell of a fight, man.
It was all for you.
It was
Before the game, they were holding like Michael to tailgate.
That's right.
That's who we're playing for.
I could sense it. Because my Tennessee Vols did not do that.
No,
they decided just to. I think they thought they were playing against Lower Alabama or something like that.
They just
might have lost the way they played.
They just thought the game was only 10 seconds long.
Yeah, which I mean that's again,
they thought it was just hey, whoever scores first, sudden death. Let's go.
Sudden death. We don't want to play a prolonged game.
The golden goal, wrong football.
I mean, when you have like less than 1/4 of ball control the entire time of possession the entire game, that's a problem.
Yeah,
you're and Tennessee's defense is already gassed. Like they're as I think Josh Pate said, he's like they're a team that had about 10 games of gas in the tank, and so they're just running on empty at this point. They're running on fumes. It's like that when your team is that gassed, especially your defense that has had to play against some pretty good offenses all year, you cannot, as an offense, do 3 and outs.
Right.
Period.
Well,
you have to at least
they've played well against good teams.
Yeah.
At least to a point.
Yeah.
I mean,
but you're going to start seeing collapses. I mean, the problem is Tennessee secondary had some issues, has had issues all year, but ever since Haddon went out back in the Alabama game, it's almost like the secondary's collapsed. But that leads me into my upset alerts for this week, and I think it's going to sound kind of silly just to pick this back to back this team back to back weeks to be upset, but I just feel like it's going to happen because talking about a team that also doesn't look like they got much gas left in the tank is Washington. I think Washington State is going to beat Washington. Again, Oregon State almost did it. I think Washington State could do it too. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure this game is at Washington State.
I'm pretty sure.
And so it's one of those things like that's just you're playing already might not be the most hostile atmosphere, but it's still a hostile atmosphere. And in Washington State, if there's one thing that they want, especially after losing 6 in a row and they finally came back with their first win in 6 games last week, they're going to want to try to ruin someone else's season because their season feels ruined.
Yep. Mind you, they're also playing pretty big to get into a bowl. Like they're 5 and 6,
which is
which is playing for a bowl spot.
It's important for them, and so I see that as probably the biggest upset for this weekend, and the most likely one to happen. The next one I've got has really no playoff. Has absolutely no playoff.
It's actually at Washington.
It's at Washington. Thank you for correction. My next one has absolutely no bearing on the college football playoffs, but it's one of those that there's a lot of people that are just like looking past it. I think Nebraska is going to beat Iowa. I think it's actually going to be a really good game. You got two decent, we got one team with an excellent defense, another team with a decent defense, but Nebraska does have a far better offense than Iowa does, and
you just need players on the field on offense, and they're already better.
That's true, and so that's where I think Iowa's going to is going to stall out. I think that while they've been a pretty solid contender all year, you just can't they're like the inverse of USC. You cannot just have all one side of the ball.
If you could take Iowa's defense and put it on
USC's offense.
I would love to see that game just to see what the score would be,
right.
Just see how the game would
It'd be
play
a
out.
very weird game. I feel like it'd be a very weird game. Probably Caleb Williams' lowest scoring game of all time. But if you combine those teams, they'd probably be an unstoppable team.
True.
For sure,
100%. There are parts of Iowa's defense that I would rank as some of the best in the Big Ten. And so it's just incredibly impressive that they've been able to do that at a arguably smaller school. But where in the world is an offense? That's the only way you score, guys. So
they've gotten a couple safeties this year.
Sure, yeah, that's
actually kind of really surprising having that many safeties.
But that's because they have to.
Yeah.
They have to go up by 2 points because they can't even kick a field goal.
I mean, their defense, if they try to do a punt return right at that, they're going to get called back.
True.
So they don't got many choices here.
So, but yeah, I've got Nebraska beating Iowa. My last upset is another one that does have some playoff ramifications, and we talked about it a little bit before we started recording. And I completely agree with your sentiment about this team and them being arguably the more talented team and everything. But I do believe that Florida is going to beat Florida State. Okay. And the reason why is because of the fact that Florida and Florida State might have a better backup quarterback than Florida does. But 1 year are playing at the Swamp. That is always a giant rivalry game. Florida has played incredibly hard in those rivalry games all year. Incredibly hard. They started the year off pretty strong with that against Tennessee, and so they showed what they're just a little bit.
Forgot about that.
And so that's one
we
of the
did watch that
rivalries.
game together, right?
Yeah, we did.
Think so.
It was really sad.
Tennessee didn't show up in the
I don't
second
remember
half.
much about that game.
Well, that's because you were pre-gaming a little hard that evening. But
we did have some good tacos though.
Yeah, there were some good tacos.
I don't
Shout
remember
out
that.
to Oscars. But you don't remember?
Ay, Dios mío.
Didn't you eat before we got there?
Yes.
Oh,
And then
okay.
I ate when you got there.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
Yes.
As long as you ate something, you know,
All the time.
all the time, just eating.
Sorry,
it all.
Florida,
Yeah.
Florida State.
Yeah, I think that Florida State. I think they're gonna play. I think they're gonna play hard. I don't think that they're gonna give up the game, but you've got Florida is playing for a bowl. They right now they're 5-6, and if Jordan Travis hadn't gotten injured, easy Florida State's gonna win this game. I don't like, and when he got injured, I was like, man, that's Florida. Now it's Florida's game to lose, and then Graham Mertz gets hurt, and I'm like, oh no, now it's like there's a lot of weird parity going on. I think that there's
Florida being Florida.
Well, yeah, exactly. I feel like there's enough that tips in Florida's favor, with it being where the matchup is at, the fact that they are playing for a bowl spot. Because the other thing is Florida State, I think, knows that regardless of whether or not they win this game, they're not going to get into the playoffs. And I think that that's what their mentality is, because of what just happened this week, where they got demoted from 4th to 5th. And so
after Washington barely beat.
Washington,
I mean, they beat a good team.
They beat a
good team, but they also put on half as many points on the board as Florida State's backup quarterback did. And so it's just Washington has not looked impressive at all for the second half of this season. No. Ever since the Oregon game, they have not looked impressive at all. And so the fact that they're as highly ranked as they are, I just am feeling like we're dealing with a potential TCU 2.0, which is really frustrating.
Yeah.
Because they've got a lot of talent, but I just don't know how they're going to size up against.
I don't think they're the best Pac-12 team.
I don't. I think Oregon is the best Pac-12 team. Personally.
I would agree with that. Yeah.
And so and the odds makers also do agree with that. They say if you go and look at it, like if you put them on a neutral field, which that might be next weekend, you put them on a neutral field, Oregon's going to be favored more than likely.
Yeah.
But those are my upsets for this week. Feel free to comment below how stupid you think they are, or how accurate you think I'm going to be. And if you say 33%, you're cheating.
Right.
Because that's the standard.
You were advanced scouting if you say 33%.
Signal stealing.
Michael's only gone 1 week where he wasn't right at all.
Yeah, that was only
2 weeks. 2 weeks where he wasn't right at all. My bad.
1 week he was 25%. And 1 week he was.
Oh, did you get the
0%.
Signs of the future he's going to be wrong
Yes,
this week?
I did.
Yeah.
I mean, it's possible.
So, but that leads us into our game of the week. Dennis, what do you have for your game of the week?
I feel like, this one goes kind of without saying. I have Ohio State and Michigan.
Oh, yeah.
It's
going to be a good one.
I feel like it's going to be an exciting game. There's so many things kind of weighing into it, like not even just on the individual players itself, but everything kind of going on for Michigan's sake. Like, they have so many distractions, so many things going on the side. And, hey, I mean, it's also Ohio State, where can you give them 3 losses in a row to you? Can you beat them 3 times in a row? Like, signage or not. Like, you have all those conversations. So I'm kind of looking forward to it. I'm kind of leaning a little bit towards Michigan, to be honest with you. Some people might be mad about that. Some people would not be able to probably say anything about it, like as much as they would like to. But I'm leaning towards Michigan. They're playing at the big house, so like that's where I'm kind of leaning with. But how about yours, Michael?
So my game of the week is one. It's a little known game. Like it's a pretty competitive game, but it's not one that most people are going to know about. It's Ohio State versus Michigan.
I don't think I've heard about that one. I have to probably look it up.
So that one is I think it's going to be the biggest game this weekend. It has just like we were talking about. It's got a lot of playoff potential. I mean, whoever loses this more than likely is not going to be in the playoffs. Unless other teams that are one loss also start losing, or they just lose worse.
Right.
I'm going to differ with you, Dennis. I think that Ohio State is going to win. I think that they've made the improvements they've needed to this year. And Michigan, when they've started to be tested, they're starting to show weaknesses, which is expected. But their testing has come so late in the season that I don't know how well they're going to be able to make adjustments, especially without a head coach. And so it's just one of those things that I think Ohio State's going to be able to go in. I think they're going to be wanting revenge for the past couple of years, especially if this sign stealing stuff is true. They're going to really want that ability to really show that
they would, because I mean it would give them the kind of the rights of like, hey, the past 2 years the only reason you beat us is because of sign stealing.
True. So but that's what my game of the week is. What about yours, Luke?
Yeah, no, it's really interesting that you guys kind of both went that way. My game of the week is going to be James Madison versus Coastal Carolina.
Interesting.
They are both in the east of the Sun Belt Conference. James Madison is number 1 and Coastal Carolina is 2. So this is kind of a battle. It's going to be who's going to win. But in all seriousness, it's Ohio State, Michigan. You've got.
You had me, man. You had me. I was like, man, I hope he's going for the Dukes, man.
I mean, I've been high on James Madison all year. I got to keep rolling with them. No, but you look at the defense, and Michigan is the number 1 ranked defense. Ohio State's the number 3 ranked defense. Mm-hmm. Now, I think where you kind of see the offense, both of them have kind of are having to find themselves, right? So, both of them have decent run games. Ohio State's had players injured. They've had a new quarterback. But Ohio State's offense is ranked 35th, while Michigan's is 55th. So I think that's really what we're going to see here is, can they live up to those statistics, right?
Yeah.
I mean, obviously they're there for a reason. You go through the entire year and you look at what they've done. I was telling Dennis earlier, I feel like Michigan kind of started off high and has slowly, J.J. McCarthy hasn't thrown a touchdown in the last 3 games. Now, they haven't needed to. Their rushing has taken care of that. But I feel like Michigan has kind of declined a little bit, while Ohio State has been on the incline. I feel like McCord has kind of gotten his feet under him. There's things that he was doing at the beginning of the year, like throwing off his back foot, that he's not doing anymore or as often.
Yeah,
they've got Egbuka back, who's back and healthy. Trevion Henderson is now back and
he's
healthy.
He's been running wild the past few
weeks. He's averaging 9.3 yards a carry and
Impressive.
Just being a beast.
Yep.
And so if Ohio State can have all of these clicking, if their offensive line can hold up, which they've even done a better job, I'm saying, I'm going to say my homer pick is Ohio State by 2 touchdowns.
Ooh, two. Okay,
it's revenge pick right there.
That's revenge week. That's Muck-Fishigan week.
Yeah.
But when I start looking at it analytically, ESPN Vegas has them as 4.5-point favorites. So obviously home field gives you 3 points.
Mm-hmm.
So they've got them 1.5. But I still think that Ohio State's going to go in there, and I'm going to say Ohio State 24. Ohio State 24, Michigan 21.
Honestly, if it's 24-21, I kind of feel like that would kind of be a high-scoring game, considering what the game is.
Considering the 2 defenses that are at play.
It seems like high scoring.
Yeah, I think that's, again, there's a lot of other good games that are going to be playing this weekend, guys.
James Madison, Coastal Carolina.
James Madison, Coastal. That's
battle of the Sun Belt East.
That exactly. I mean, you're talking about the Sun Belt East. Well, this is the battle of the Big Ten East.
Battle of the Sun Belt East.
Battle of the Sun Belt East. You got Battle of the Big Ten East. It's there's a lot of big games, and who's to determine what's one is more important than the other, right?
Ohio State, Michigan is
the Dukes.
Totally
best rivalry ever.
Yeah. Well, okay. Well, that's debatable, but
I mean, when has Tennessee been
debating Marvin Harrison's the best receiver in college football?
Well, no, because what?
No. I would probably say Jaden Daniels is probably the best quarterback right now. Best player.
I'm sorry, best
player.
Marvin Harrison's the best receiver.
Best player. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
It's fine. Don't apologize to me. Go ahead.
It's okay.
Go ahead.
Apologize to the people.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I mean, it is what it is. I there's a bunch of good games this weekend, but definitely Ohio State Michigan is going to be the biggest and most defining game, because it's going to actually really determine the layout of the playoffs.
Yeah, and I just want to say, I understand what both you guys are saying, but I think you're both wrong.
Okay.
Yeah, just want to let you know Michigan's going to win.
Okay.
It's going to come down to the running game on both sides, and Michigan has a better.
Do you know
running back.
something? Have you been talking to a Stallion recently?
He has a better running back.
I was looking at my notes. My bad.
Oh, okay.
I got to check them out sometimes. But I have a little switch here that my glasses kind of can zoom in and zoom out. But no, I got my resources. I got my news. You know?
Okay, fair enough. I mean, I know you got your sources and stuff like that.
Well, you can't fix stupid.
No, you can't. You just can't.
Trust me, we've been friends with you long enough.
You've tried.
We've tried.
All right. Well, thanks again for joining tonight's Tailgate. Come back next week, grab a drink, and join the conversation.